So we call to order the January 21st, 2021 SFO Airport Community Roundtable Technical Working Group Ad Hoc Subcommittee. Really? Meeting at 2 p.m. We're meeting via Zoom teleconference pursuant to the shelter-in-place order issued by the San Mateo County Health Officer, the Governor's Office, and the CDC social distancing guidelines, which discourage large public gatherings. Joining us today to help staff this meeting are Angela Montes, Roundtable Administrative Assistant, Michelle Rodriguez, Roundtable Coordinator, Justin Cook, Aviation Technical Consultant from HMMH, and we also have Bert Ganug from the Airport Noise Abatement Office. Please note that we will be recording this meeting, and the recording will be available on the Roundtable website in a few days. At this point, Angela, would you explain how the public can participate in today's meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman Ortiz. For those attending and wishing to make a public comment, we will use the raise hand feature on Zoom. During the general public comment and for each item on the regular agenda, I will ask those members of the public who wish to comment to click the raise hand feature to speak on that agenda item. For those joining by phone, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. When you hear your name called, I will prompt you to unmute your account and inform you that you may begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes. Please note that members of the public must wait for my prompt in connection with each agenda item before using the raise hand function. For example, you cannot raise your hand at the beginning of the meeting for an agenda item that is later in the meeting. Written comments that were submitted in advance will be read by me during discussion item of the appropriate agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And with that, we will call this meeting to order. And we don't need to do a formal roll call. However, I will now ask Ms. Rodriguez to make note of the roundtable members who are present so we can have that for the record.
Thank you very much. We have Terry O'Connell, Ricardo Ortiz. We have Linda Woolen, I think, representing the Board of Supervisor. We have Ann Schneider. We've also got Sam Hindi, who's an attendee, that if we could just move him over to panelist. And John Carvel. And I think that's all I've seen. Did I miss anybody? There's Vice Chair Sam Hindi. Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Vice Chair. And now we can move on to item number 2, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on any items that are not on the agenda. So with that, Angela, do we have any public comment?
Yes, I do see 2 hands raised. Give me 1 second so I could share my screen on the timer. And I will first call on Jennifer Landisman, followed by Mary Jo Fremont. And if we can please have the public members state their city. 1 second. Okay, Jennifer, please accept this request to unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Hi, thank you, Chairman Ortiz and members of the roundtable. This is just a comment to reiterate and remind that I can't see who all the members of the public attending are today, but I know there are some, and like myself, who attend these meetings. I try to make an effort, but I just want to remind that the people who stand to be affected by many of the discussions you have here and the actions that FAA and yourselves are taking that impact flight patterns and noise in our communities, the people who stand to be affected are not aware, and I have not seen any information that could be helpful for people to understand and be able to respond to any of these activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Landisman. And with that, we go to the next one.
Mary Jo Fremont.
Yes, thank you. Mary Jo Fremont from Palo Alto. As you're probably aware, the FA just released the Neighborhood Environmental Survey about community annoyance, and that was based on questionnaires and interviews completed in 2016. It's a very important survey because the results shatter the FA foundation for the 65 dB DNL standard of significant impact. The FA used the community annoyance data from the 1970s, also known as the Schultz curve, to establish the 65 dB standard. And using the Schultz curve was already controversial then. But now the new survey results show that 5 to 10 times more people are annoyed by aircraft noise than previously thought. So this is really, really important results. So the SFO Roundtable should really consider providing comments on this new survey by the March 15 deadline, as it did for the supersonic. And I would recommend that the item be discussed at your next full roundtable meeting on February 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is a great comment. I appreciate that. And Angela, do we have any other public comments?
We do not, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so having none, we will move on to item number 3, which is an update on our ground-based augmentation system. SFO staff provided this technical committee an update on Gbas on this November 19, 2020 meeting. And we members asked for some more information. First was the maps that showed areas that had purple in a noise expansion area. And so we wanted to clarify that. The vertical profile showed a new initial and intermediate airplane approaches to have increased slopes and altitudes to provide more information on the use of airplane air brake noise location and Cnel decibel level. So the concern was that if there was a steeper slope, that they would be using their air brakes more. Then the timeline, SFO shows submitting the concept FAA in March. So we wanted an update on next steps. So I'm guessing we're going to Bert on this one.
Yes, you will be. Hello.
Thank you, Bert.
How's everybody today? You're very welcome. Going to be fairly brief on this, but just wanted to first start off saying that just like every other entity out there, we're facing some pretty significant challenges right now. Budgetarily and for the future, we're still going forth with Gbas. We still plan to go with our timeline as close as possible, although it's likely it will see some change a little bit down the line, pending what goes on with budget and planning and everything else. We need to stay afloat. We don't want to pause it, and the reason for that is you pause it, you lose the interest and focus of parties such as the airlines and the FAA that you need to actually keep interested and keep going with it. So we're still looking at the March, May at the latest timeframe for the first portion. We're looking good there. The remaining portions out in the future, I'm betting we'll see some changes to those, but right now we're still trying to keep on track, keep what the timeline is presented. And let's see. Moving on to our next portion of this, the maps. Okay. Those maps that were shown with the contours, they are single event contours. Uh-oh, seeing a bunch of hands. Should I pause and let those go through?
No, I'd like to let you finish yours, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, very good. those contours, our goal is to get those out where the public can view them, use them in a format that they wish, such as zoomable, which has been the big request. They want to be able to get down to a very tight level and see how they interact with the communities. And then the next one was they wanted Cnel contours. These contours were single event, specifically for one aircraft type, one flight. And the reason being, and I believe Paul Hanna mentioned this during the original presentation, is we used a very accurate aircraft model that is not yet fully accepted by the FAA. I mean, it's accepted for use in the scientific and the study areas, but it's pretty widely agreed that the what they call basic aircraft data 4, BADA 4 model is very, very accurate. And that was why we wanted to use it over the current BADA 3 models. The BADA 4 gave us some very, very accurate levels that we looked at it, but you can't use it for Cnel at this point. And so that's why we're not seeing Cnel contours done with it. And also too, the intent was just to look at the one. The next level was the steep approaches and air brakes and things like that. Those will need to be modeled further on with the tighter tolerances, and it's the best way to explain it. It has to be run through simulators, and it hasn't been at this time. So in the future, we can look down the line, see if we can get help with that from the aircraft manufacturers as well as the airlines. And that's where we'll see where these aircraft choose to do any drag-inducing devices, speed brakes, flaps, alternate devices. And pretty well took care of those questions on that. And now moving into the next, which was, let's see.
Through the chair, I'm sorry, Chair Ortiz, my question was, is it possible to screen share so we know exactly what Bert is referring to? Because I'm flipping back and forth from the agenda packet and I'm a little bit lost.
Okay.
Okay, so Bert, I don't know if you can take over and do you have a screen to share with us?
No, that's what I said. I don't have
Okay.
the screens at this point to share for that.
Okay, but so for clarification purposes, what Bert was referring to is the Gbas called for steeper approach from the airplanes, and the question that was brought up at our last technical working group was what that would do to the use of air brakes and any additional noise created by those steeper routes.
Right. And so the noise contours that we saw, we're not looking at those in that because we don't have that information. It wasn't modeled in there at that point. We were looking at a optimized profile descent, and it would have shown that the aircraft continued on down. Any areas where we would have had the aircraft change its approach angle, getting into speed changes, power additions, things like that, would have actually shown with the addition or reduction at those points by the green and the purple. And since we didn't have those in there to model, it was all the optimized profile, we didn't see any. Later on. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. I want to let Bert finish before we open it up to questions. So let's let Bert finish his presentation, and then we can open it up.
And later on, based on any simulator work that we can do with the airlines or the aircraft manufacturers, we would be able to see any of those type of changes. And
Perfect.
conclude.
Okay, thank you, Bert. And so now we'll open it up to questions, and I hand it back to Angela to manage the raised hands, because I can't see them from where I'm looking. Or can I? Hold on, maybe I can't see them. No, I don't see any raised hands. So I know there's some people who are
Yes,
chomping at the bit. So does any members have questions of Bert or any comments?
yes, I do see Justin Cook, who had his hand raised, as well as Terry O'Connell.
Okay, I'm
Justin?
going to start with Justin. Justin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bert,
Justin, your
sorry,
acoustics are really bad.
are
Yeah,
they?
your sound, there's
Really
something
bad.
wrong.
Okay, let me maybe come back to me. I'll switch my headset. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go then. We'll go to Terry. Terry O'Connell can go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to know what maps, because I was not at the original meeting where the group had questions. What maps was, can he refer to a page in our
So-
agenda for the maps
Just a
that
moment,
he was
right.
talking about?
Let me see if I can find one real quick.
Noise expansion areas or purple areas is on page
Yeah.
22 of your packet.
There you go.
And the vertical profiles on page 20 of your packet.
Okay, my page 20 and 22 do not show those.
All right, just a
They're
moment.
the procedure development and community evaluation.
Through the chair, I think I found 28 on runway 28, I think on page 17.
Thank
If that's
you.
kind of what we were trying to equate what Bert was saying.
Hi. Yeah, I was just having to. I was on a
Well,
Zoom and I had.
Or maybe it's 15.
So we're talking about
I
the
don't-
labels that say SFO GLS concept 28 right bridge visual.
That was my guess.
And this is Justin. Can you hear me better now?
much
Yes.
better.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think it's in general the entire presentation, but specifically packet page 21 has the noise contours with some purple shaded areas. And I think that gives a good depiction of what was done and what Bert's been describing.
And it's titled Single Event Noise Analysis.
Correct.
Uh,
Helps.
Terry,
And
did
Trying
you
to
locate
pull
him,
it
Terry? Were you okay? Terry O'Connell? Bueller?
I'm sorry, this is my page 21.
Okay, Terry, the 2 pages before that one.
Yep.
This?
Yep.
Okay,
that
that's
is it.
page 19.
Hmm.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Great. So Justin, you had a comment, a question?
Yes, for Bert. Bert, given and understanding the current situation that we're experiencing and SFO is regarding budgets and concerns, but knowing that you plan on keeping this same time frame in terms of submittal to the FAA, which could be as early as March, how do you anticipate further sharing of information and details, such as maybe more defined maps, if there's an ability to run a different metrics, such as time above, number above. I would agree with you regarding single event noise metrics being more of something that should be looked at rather than CNEL that might not show any change, given how far out possible changes would be. So what is your sense on how, in terms of, Paul Hanna and his team being able to provide us with some more detailed information?
Well, we just got off a call discussing that. We're looking at hopefully being able to do quite a bit of work with Paul and his team, since they are the ones that have been with us through up now, and they've been very good about being able to do that work. We may find that some of it comes back more to us in being able to share and put those out. So probably on our website is where they'll go. Right now we were trying to do the ones that you saw in a scalable, zoomable format that we've been requested to do. It's taking a little longer than I expected, but we're getting closer. And I believe that we'll be able to put those up probably in our information portal, the noise portal, which we introduced. We would put it into an appropriate section to do that. If nothing else, it would be, it wouldn't be hosted off the SFO section direct, the SFO page. We did find that the SFO webmaster did have some issues being able to do that. And we spoke with EnviroSuite, our provider for our noise monitoring system. They said that they would be willing to give it a try, and they've given us some samples so far that look pretty good. So now we need to create the landing page and the wrapper for that to put that in with.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one follow-up concern I have is just regarding timing, and what your sense is in regards to making sure that information gets up there and we're able to digest it and view it,
Right.
knowing your time frame of delivering something to the FAA. So
yeah, like I said, we're definitely trying to get all that up so that we can share it with the public.
okay, thanks, Bert.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Justin. Any other comments or questions from the members?
Yes, I do see Mayor Ann Schneider's hand raised.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And just point of reference, I am looking at page 21 of the PDF packet. I've expanded out the contour, and I'm trying to get a better understanding of the contour. And it looks like the 70, 75 decibel around the airport, which of course means Millbrae and San Bruno, kind of stops, or maybe it's just for the number in there. And then there's a 65 contour, which now reaches up to El Camino Real. Bert, am I seeing this correctly?
I'm actually trying to bring up the packet right now so that I can display it and everybody see it. One moment.
Yeah, not a problem. I think when I expanded it on my computer, it gets a little fuzzy. So I'm guessing by the yellow lines that those are the major roads. So I'm trying to look at that. And
yeah,
if
that was one of the issues that people were running into as they tried to run the model. And we found that it, for lack of a better word, didn't display as well as they had hoped or that they could see. Where'd that go?
well, actually now looking at it, it looks like the 65 decibel line. I guess I can't tell which one is the 60 or the 65. I'd love to interpret the 65 as going up to El Camino Real because it includes a couple of our neighborhoods that are heavily impacted all the time, but that might be the 60 decibel.
Yeah, I think this is Justin. I think you're right, Ann. I think that is actually the 60.
Yeah.
And the 65 is kind of by the 101, or a little short of the 101. So yeah.
And again, if I'm sorry, I know I should get my various contour lines, going back to what Bert said, that this is not taking, it's not a CNEL line. Therefore, it's only including what type of noise?
It's a single event, which means it's all the noise from one flight, one aircraft type, and it's just here it all is at one time.
And it's only high frequency, or is it low and high?
No, decibels A-weighted.
It's just A-weighted. So again, probably just a need for additional modeling on there. And you know, I'm not sure on arrivals we get that much low frequency noise. I just don't know. Maybe we can add that to the agenda, a future agenda for ground-based noise, to get a real feel for that. But darn.
Yeah, and this is Justin. I'll just add that I think that was, you know, one of the reasons why we wanted to get some more detailed maps and an ability to zoom in to kind of more clearly see some of these areas and where the contours sit. And I think, Anne, in regards of low frequency noise, predominantly that would be during the time when they reverse thrust to slow down.
Right.
And that would create that low frequency noise that you're.
So I think if I cannot speak for the public that tends to come from Burlingame, but wasn't that one of our issues that we wanted to test, that with the thrust on to slow the plane down, that might be the noise that's now reaching Burlingame neighborhoods that weren't being reached before?
That is definitely a possibility. You know, you will see in the ground-based report, hopefully soon, that you'll see that we did do some modeling on the 2.8s. Yes, it was for departure, but I think it will give you a sense of how that propagates into areas like Burlingame. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
For good or bad, I'm glad that we're starting to get a good handle, or a better handle on this. So thank you.
So I hope you're all able to see, but this is the type of image that we're hoping to be able to put out there for everybody. Right now it's fairly large, and I have to run it directly from my C drive. That's why I had to quick move everything back over, because I had to delete it to make room to work on the laptop that I have from work. But I brought it back up, loaded it, and showed it. This is what the image that you had in your packet's based from. And so we're looking at two contours here. One is for a standard approach on the diamond, and another one using a Gbas approach, a little bit steeper. This area out here in purple does show a bit of an increase in noise. And when the, in the 50 decibel contour range. So what we're looking at here is, and we're still trying to be sure of exactly what the model picked up, but there's some belief that it might be because the aircraft came in here at a given speed and fairly flat, not on the full descent yet. It created a pop of a noise signature here. So not 100% yet, but it may change if the aircraft was a little steeper through here, and we would see changes there. So as we go in here and it turns green, we're noticing a reduction. So
When you say pop, Bert, if I could interrupt, do you mean that that they were trying to maintain altitude, so they might have
yes, exactly,
increased
fairly
thrust?
flat,
Okay.
maintaining altitude, and so it just started there. We saw an example that was given to us by a Boeing modeler, and they started a down the bay arrival, and it had a huge circular start of a noise signature, and they didn't know what was going on and realized later what was going on there, and it became a much better story for them once they figured out what's going on. So this could change, and I'm optimistic of that because I can't figure out why it would truly be that. And so I'm hoping that we'll find better news on that. But anyway, this is what we're trying to give the public, the ability to, zoom in and start looking at based on close-in noise on specific areas, things like that.
That's great,
So
Bert.
Bert, if I'm looking at that map correctly and those contours,
Yes,
we're reducing noise at lower altitudes, and that purple area was at a much higher altitude than all these other circles that we're looking at.
correct.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I don't have altitudes on here, but I'm not even going to say it because I know I'll get it wrong. Somebody's going to pin me to the wall with it.
No, I get it, but it just in general, and again, we can get to the details of what that altitude is, but we're talking about increasing noise, decreasing noise when they're much lower and closer to the ground. So that's
correct.
what I'm
so
focusing.
Looking at the one flight here, two flights overlaid on top of each other. That's why we have two contours. One of them is the diamond approach as it's done today with the ILS. The other one done with Gbas on today's standard. Bless you.
Thank you.
And so this hyper accurate noise model was what they were really hoping for, to be able to see these fine detail changes.
Great. Okay, so with that, do we have any other questions from members?
Mr.
Or any
Chairman, I do not.
comments from members? We can get the final comments after public comment. I'm sorry, I heard a voice.
Yeah,
Am
I
hearing
do
voices?
not see any hands raised from members at the moment, but we do have
Very good.
hands raised from the public.
Sounds good. So now that's our next step, is then having no more comments from members, we're going to open it up to public comments. I'll let you take it over, Angela.
Thank you. And as a reminder for those calling by phone, you may press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. And I do see two hands raised. I will first call on Darlene. I'll make that 3, followed by Jennifer Landisman. And if I could just remind all of our public members to state the city they are calling from. Darlene?
Darlene Yapley, Palo Alto. Thank you very much. I have 3 clarifying items. The first one is on the review process and schedule before the go, no go decision to submit some innovative approaches. I am not sure how today's update fits in the review schedule and step on the slide where it says SFO reviews feedback with Roundtable / TWG. The slide's in the packet and it's page 23. As Justin mentioned, there are a lot of questions that have not yet been answered, which is understandable, including some about the overlay. Myself and Marie Jo Fremont had sent some questions in on November 24th for both the overlay and the innovative approaches, but we did not see that in the December 1st letter from the Roundtable to the Airport Commission on page 43. So I understand that the Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Roundtable also submitted questions to SFO. So could you clarify when SFO will provide answers to the submitted questions and how that actually relates to the milestones on your schedule, and clarify when and how the roundtables will provide input on the go, no go decision? My second item is related to Gbas installation and testing. As mentioned in the Roundtable December 1st letter, it seems like we're transitioning from installation for testing to using and operating Gbas. So my question is, after installing Gbas, will SFO test the landing system to check that it works and measure noise impacts on communities before SFO abandons its landing system? My third question is about the scope of the CADEX. Is the CADEX for testing Gbas or is it for using Gbas? I had previously requested to see if SFO could post the CADEX document on the Gbas website. I have not seen that, and I'd like to request that again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yapley. As usual, good questions. Bert, would you like to take those? And
She may have to help me with a couple. I was writing as fast as I could.
okay, she was trying
So
to keep her 2 minutes.
The review process on the schedule. And today's update, I apologize if it doesn't fit for you, but we were basically trying to get some answers back to the roundtable based on the questions we received. Yes, there are quite a few more. I was hoping to compile them with the ones from the SCSC roundtable. They elected to go a different route and not provide those to me up front, so I don't have those at this moment. Many questions not answered on December 1st. Yes, I understand that. And those are the ones that you submitted. And we're working on getting those in a format that we can actually put up on our website or host. Let's see. Comments on a go, no go. And CADX. It doesn't fall under CADX being a federal project. It falls under NEPA, and that's the FAA to do those. So there will not be a CADX. I mean, wanted to clarify that, not CADX. The FAA does the CADX based on their NEPA. It's not a CEQA project. That was a question that we received quite a bit on. So it's not a CEQA project, it's federal, not California. And then the testing of the Gbas, yes, once it's installed, set, and working, that's the reason why we have the direct overlay procedures, so that we can actually use those as reference material based on current. The FAA will begin testing on those. As far as shutting down the old procedures, the intent is not to shut those down. There aren't enough airlines and aircraft at this time to be able to do that wholesale. We can't do that. So I would expect both systems to run concurrently for some time. And then moving forward with anything innovative, that's in the future. And that would need input.
Okay, so as far as answering, there's some of the written questions that there. So how would you, once you answer those, how do you get those back out to the public?
Initially, we'll probably do it in the form of a FAQ sheet that we'll send out through the roundtables.
Perfect.
Post on
Okay.
the website.
So, okay, thank you. And again, thank you, Ms. Dapley. And so I think we have another public comment, Ms. Landesman.
Yeah, we have 3 more hands raised.
Okay, great.
I will call on Jennifer Landesman, followed by Mary Jo Fremont. Jennifer?
Thank you, Jennifer Landesman, resident of Palo Alto. Just for initially, I'd like to talk about mapping, just theoretically, because right now I really don't know where we stand in terms of who will provide environmental information to us, whether it's SFO or FAA. I do believe that the responsible party is FAA, and this is sort of an interest in SFO to being more transparent, but we really need a lot of information. So because of COVID, at least I'll speak for myself, there is a tremendous relief right now. And prior to this, it was very, very troublesome. So as you all know, we've worked on a series of different processes to try to get relief. So if the project of Gbas has been presented by SFO to reduce noise, what we're really interested is not so much in all of these, I'm not interested in seeing like minutia on one flight, but really how my environment is going to change as a result of not just one procedure, but several procedures. And in that, I want to see, where we're coming from and where we're going. And for that, absolutely, one flight is not going to do it. So I think there's a lot of things, and I'm concerned about the fact that there may not be any resources from SFO, which is why it would have been nice to do this the many years when things were really good that we asked for this and it didn't happen. And so what does that mean? Like SFO is not going to provide this data. We we'll have to get it from the FAA or not, or it's got to come from somewhere, or is the expectation that we're going to have to do our own studies in order to find out what's going on? But all of that should fit within the NEPA process, and that's still been made very unclear. And I think the innovative procedures confuse things very much. So I look forward to working on this with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bert, would you like to comment on that, or?
Like I said, we'll be bringing out the information in the future on the innovative procedures. They're a ways down. Right now, we're focused on the getting the system in and getting the project off the ground as far as the system itself.
Perfect. Okay. Angela, we had one more public comment.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We actually have two hands, Mary Jo
Okay.
and Jennifer from Sunnyvale. Mary Jo, please accept this request.
Thank you, Mary Jo Freeman from Palo Alto. So, sorry, I want to touch upon the modeling and the mention that Bert said that the modeling, the maps that you saw, these contours of the maximum noise for one aircraft and the equivalent noise if the total noise of the aircraft for 1 second. These are assumed to be on an OPD, which is another word for the FAA, which is the airplane is gliding to the runway. Well, we know, because that's where I live, we know they're not gliding to the airport. They deploy speed brakes. So they flaps, they slats, etc., and they do that over land, over the peninsula, and where I live and many people live, and that makes a huge, huge noise. There was an MIT study, there's another big report, we don't have time to talk about it, but it showed that because of these speed brakes, it increases the noise of a single aircraft by +8 dB, one single aircraft. So you multiply this by hundreds of aircraft per day, and you can see that's why we're hammered by noise now where we live. So this modeling where you're going to use these contours that are shown to make a go, no-go decision, but they don't use speed brake, it means nothing. They are not valid to make a decision. So that's really important to consider. These are not good data. So until you put the speed brake, you can't really decide. And the second point is the noise increases. Paul Hanna made it very clear that at least for the surfer approach, the reason why the noise would increase, for instance, over Los Altos, is because the FAA has refused to collaborate with the SFO team to smooth the connection and make sure that the altitude at the waypoint 80, which is the end of the procedure, will be optimal for not increasing the noise. So these noise increases could be solved if the FAA were to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman.
I will now call on Jennifer from Sunnyvale.
Very good. Let's go to Jennifer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Bert, I'm not sure I understood something you had said, or maybe I misunderstood. You had mentioned something that the SCSC Roundtable did not submit the Gbas questions up front. I was wondering if you could clarify that. Again, I might have misunderstood. A couple of questions now, though, about Gbas.
Yeah, I asked for a list of GBAS questions from them.
Okay, and they haven't. Okay, I was just curious. The FAA states that one of the main benefits of Gbas is that it could increase the number of operations because it basically compresses density of the terminal operations, meaning that it could potentially allow more planes in per hour. So I kind of wanted to get an idea from you, or maybe SFO, if it allows an increase in operations, and this is supposed to help in noise, how will SFO compensate for that? So more planes in the air, more noise. How will that be compensated for compared to current technology that would be allowed without Gbas? In other words, how will the environment overall change? The other question that I had is if there is more noise from Gbas after it's installed, will SFO be able to reverse the procedure? Or will FAA and the airlines be in such control that there will be no nothing that the residents or SFO can do to reverse a procedure that ultimately results in more noise. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
If I may, sir.
Oh, yes, please go ahead, Bert.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah, the SCSU roundtable, I said, always easier to have questions in advance, if you would, please. They said, well, they're going to come from these general areas. So I have very vague areas that they're looking at. I sort of lined them up based on the questions that our roundtable received from the Paul Hanna presentation. And so I'm trying to make sure we get those dug in and answered. As far as more aircraft on Gbas, well, I think what we're looking for is particularly during inclement weather, where the FAA has to actually track the arrivals. They should be able to bring them back into what we would expect to see on a normal day. And so the help from that comes in that we don't have delays. We don't have the extending into the late evening and early morning flights that arrived on time as they would on a normal day, but had to be strung out or slowed down en route to be able to make it into SFO. When that happens, it makes everybody's day miserable. First of all, with the controllers, second of all, with the pilots and passengers having to sit on a long flight, and finally with the people on the ground down below experiencing the, say, 9, 10, 11 o'clock flights at 10, 11, 12 instead. So that's, I believe, where we're looking at it for that standpoint. Not so much that we would love to just run more and more airplanes in. And then the environmental changes, hopefully for the better at that point. And then, as far as more noise on the procedure and what could happen then, the nice thing about a non-federal project like this one, the airport owns the system. And we can go in and turn off a procedure and mark it with the FAA as not available. So if we have collectively determined that, look, this is not good, it's really making everybody's life miserable, creates more noise, then we could go in and turn it off. The system right now, as it sits, once the FAA publishes a procedure, public domain, it's out there for everybody. And unless there's a safety issue and they deem it or are informed of it, then they have to be the ones that deal with it and turn it off.
Okay, thank you, Bert. With that, Angela, do we have any more public comment?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
Great. So with that, I'm going to close the public comment and go back to the members. Are there any final thoughts from members before we move on to the next item? And having none, then we will.
Sorry, we do have a hand raised by Mayor Anderson.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you. Who's the hand?
Of course, it's me, Vice Mayor. A couple of follow-ups, just from what the last public member brought up, more on Gbas, is it really more planes, more noise? Made me wonder if before COVID, the way SFO was going to handle the passenger increase from 57 million to 71 million was by not necessarily more flights, but bigger flights, bigger planes. When there are bigger planes and they're coming in on approach, do bigger planes make more noise than smaller planes the way they do on departure?
Really depends on the aircraft and what's going on. I'm finding a lot of the newer aircraft are extremely quiet.
Even as they get bigger?
The bigger ones, yeah.
Okay, they're obviously lighter on approach than they are on departure because they've used up their fuel. Then my second question, when you mentioned, Bert, about inclement weather, that yeah, we'll be able to get the flights in on a normal runway in a timely fashion, hopefully reducing the number of night flights versus evening flights. But does that also mean that fewer flights would be diverted from runway 28 onto runway 1 arrivals?
Now, I'm not going to guarantee that at all. That's based on wind. And that's a
Well, you had said inclement weather. To me,
yeah,
every time I
inclement
hear
weather. So when we have low ceilings, things like that, and we're looking at needing, the FAA needs to, for safety, putting a longer distance between the aircraft nose to tail, one behind it. Yeah, that it can be brought closer.
okay, not any way to, generally my region doesn't complain about reverse wind, reverse flow patterns because we recognize it as safety. But given that we're pretty much hit by every airplane's activity, including stuff on the ground, there has to be a time when we say enough.
Okay.
And I'm at the point of saying enough. Even though right now there are fewer flights, they just all seem to take off at midnight to 2 o'clock in the morning or from 5 to 7 a.m. I'm done.
Okay,
Vice Mayor.
very good. Thank you very much. And is there any other member comments, or else I'm ready to move to item number 4? Angela, need raise hands.
We do not have any raised hands.
Very good. Then with that, we will move on to item number 4, which is the remote monitoring terminal threshold study. And let me read you what I have here. BridgeNet International was contracted by SFO Noise Office to review aircraft noise event thresholds at 5 remote noise monitoring terminals. This review includes conducting of an analysis of measured noise levels and recommending noise thresholds and duration that should be used in the future. Attached to your package on page 47 is the report. The Airport Community Roundtable enlisted its aviation technical consultant, HMMH, to conduct a review of the initial report. HMMH memo page 77 of packet, and to determine the consistency with Title 21, to identify any gaps in analysis, information, or concerns, and recommending any other project alternatives to support the roundtable goal of community noise reduction. As a result, BridgeNet revised the report, and those changes are shown underlined in the Bridge report attached to your package. With that, I will pass it on to Bert to give us an update on the purpose of the report, the results, and next steps.
Okay. Very simple. The study was commissioned based on the endpoint monitors, which would have been Site 12 for the east. We looked at Site 8 for the south. We looked at 18 and 19 for the west, 15 for the north, since pretty much everything else north is over water. We stayed with that. And we wanted to be sure that either what we were using currently is what we needed to be using, or if we needed to make any adjustments. So we went ahead and requested a threshold review. Wanted to get a document that was pretty close to what we needed to have to submit to the state of California for any waivers that we might need. And some of you might recall what we asked for on that one was a document that would have updated the threshold points that we need to function, meaning that we want to have aircraft noise levels that are above and beyond the community noise to a reasonable level, so that we're not having what might be termed dirty noise events, which means combining community and aircraft noise. We wanted to have the separation of community and aircraft to a point that we could actually definitively do that. And did I get a comment there? Anyway.
No, sir. I was coughing, sorry.
It's okay. And so we looked at it in the standpoint of going that way. And so asked our provider to go ahead and look at those, make their recommendations. One that was, we had hoped that perhaps under our new system, we might be able to bring 8, which is the one nearest SFO's runways 1 backblast area in the Millbrae community. And unfortunately, it can't be brought in. We just cannot do it. So let me see if I can go ahead and share this with you guys. And get it off of one page. Actually, just cancel that and just go with the display. So here's a copy of the threshold document. And you can see that we looked at site 8, 12, 15, 18, 19. And they basically went through each of our sites, give a background on why we did it, give a little bit of a terms definition, characteristics of sound, propagation of noise metrics. We talked about the different levels. So the maximum noise level, or LMAX, single event or the single event noise exposure level, SENEL, and CNEL, community noise exposure level. And this is what we're really looking for, is the CNEL to be able to stay within 1.5 dB of what we should be reporting for the state. And thresholds, you may recall from an earlier presentation that I made, the state doesn't put in there 55 dB. They say 10 decibels below the noise threshold, which is 65. And so by doing the basic subtraction of 10 decibels from 60, you come up with 55. So state of California says pretty much 55 decibels. Well, any of you who have been in the area or around the Roundtable for a while do know that noise levels very close to the airport typically in urban cities are above 55. So here's our sites. Here's the current thresholds. We're looking at 65, pretty much 64, 63, and a 65. And so as we went, we put in some, BridgeNet put in information here on the types of approaches and departures that the monitor would capture. We have quite a bit of information on the date that was pulled, the amount of flights. We're on our standard west flow pattern. And so we went ahead with the ambient noise monitor measured level results. And we're looking at these as pretty much the median of our statistical noise levels for each of the sites. And so we have ambience of 62, 51, 55, 50, 50, 51, 50, and 48. And as you can see, an MT8, 62, quite high. With the freeway there, the area behind the airport, busy Millbrae Ave, it's a tough site. It's a hard sell. And years ago, we used to use what was called a trigger noise monitor, which means down the runways, we put one in. We put one in as a portable to go ahead and test and see if this would help us out, be able to resurrect this as a viable site. We don't think so. We're probably going to be relocating site 8 so that we can get better noise in that area and have better monitoring. So with that, we went ahead and site 8. And I'm going to zoom in on this a bit because I'm believing that you aren't able to see it quite as well as I can. So let's see, let's go 200% for this one. And so what we looked at is if we went down to 60 or up to 69 from the current setting of 65. And so you can see, lower we go, we're going to capture a whole lot more noise events. Well, I can tell you that we're not going to be able to say that there were 12,000 noise events from aircraft easily. We're looking at the number of events we can correlate to the amount of flights. And so as you go down through, you can find how they're able to find out the ability to do that. So as we go back through and look, we see that actually raising it a dB might help it out. The more we look at it, the site isn't able to be saved, so we didn't keep going with that in the way of our look. When we go to site 12, it's easier to see how the system would work and benefit from what it has. So we're talking about actually lowering the threshold at site 12 in Foster City. We'll actually be able to capture more aircraft. So we go down to an area of 62, 63. You can see that we come up from 4,587 to 5874, 5632. We do a lot better. And so we're looking at that. So our recommended threshold is 62 decibels. When we go to 15, same principle. We're looking at lowering from 65 to 60. So it'd be a 4 decibel reduction from the current 64. We're also talking about dropping our durations. Duration means once a noise event starts, there's a window that runs for up to 120 seconds. And that one, most of the monitors we're probably going to look at dropping down to 60. And the reason for that is we can get run-on noise events with a community noise level with a lower threshold. We're getting closer to the community. And so if the community happens to be a little bit loud that day, it will allow the noise event to continue on. What we'd rather do is terminate that noise event, let the system reset for another one and capture that next aircraft. Because what they found in looking at it, the amount of aircraft that duration was less than 60 seconds was significant enough that coming down here, we were able to get a better correlation. Site 18 out through the gap. The default threshold for that one would be 55. And we raised it to 63. And so we're looking at keeping it at 63 and lowering the duration to 60 gives us a good correlation rate. When we slide to 19, I can show you that. The recommended threshold was 64 and we're at 65. So we drop it 1 decibel. What we would do with these is set them, run it for a period of time and evaluate it just to make sure that they are correct. And then go ahead and submit this paper to the state along with the information from our results, requesting these as part of our threshold waivers. And anything you'd like to add, Justin?
Yes, sorry.
Please.
I had to get myself out of mute. So we took that report and HMH conducted a review and included in the packet is our initial review of the BridgeNet report, which made some recommendations for them on things we wanted to see, specifically as it relates to Title 21 compliance. And so they went ahead and made some of those changes, which is also included in your packet. And additionally, after that, we wanted to follow up with them to make a few other adjustments, specifically in Title 21 with a 1.5 dB accuracy and showing additional information regarding ensuring that complies at each of those NMTs that Bert mentioned. I just received a revision today from them. And so HMMH will do hopefully one last review, making sure everything looks good in terms of Title 21 compliance. And so, yeah, we will be doing that review. It should be quick. It's just a matter of checking to make sure, they put in some of those things that we requested that the state will look for. I'm happy to answer any other questions too, along with Bert. So just feel free.
Chairman, you're muted. Ricardo, you're muted.
Oh yeah, it works a lot better without that, right? So with that, we will move on to member questions and comments. I think I see two raised hands that are Terry O'Connell and Ann Schneider. So I'll start with Terry. Go ahead, Terry.
Sure, thank you. On raising the number 8, I think Millbrae from 65 to 67, some of the noises there probably may be coming from on the ground operations that aren't included as noise events in your areas. So wouldn't that be adding those 2 decibels to community noise and contributing that airport noise to the community noise level rather than from the airport?
Could. And that's one of the reasons why we decided that Site 8 was not a good site. We will be most likely decommissioning and relocating it. Right now, it's a scientific acoustic anomaly enough that our vendor's been having a field day trying to make it work. And I'm sure Justin's laughing at this, but
it's definitely a complex site in anywhere really throughout the city, right? It's in this one especially because there's so many other noise sources, right? The highway, like you're saying, possible ground-based noise from the airport that aren't attributed to an actual event. So it definitely is one of those that is very difficult, especially if you want to use it for something like Title 21 compliance, right? And adjusting the quarterly contours based off of those measurements.
Yeah, and 2, with the Millbrae Gateway construction going on right there, it's there's a rather large building that we don't want to be near, but are now going to be near. So we're going to have to relocate.
So
Okay.
just to clarify, Terry, do you mind if I just because now I'm a little confused. So these monitors are designed to measure the noise of overflights, not ground-based noise. So that is why we're saying what we're saying about number 8 is because it is picking up a lot of noise that's otherwise not an airplane flying overhead.
Understood. You can take the noise monitor and have it do what you would like with it. You can also, as our vendor's been doing, use some different acoustical methods of looking at the noise you get for it, even though it is set for taking over flights. They actually are doing some really high-tech methods of using modeled noise to bring in the actual aircraft events. So when they have a track they can actually show a noise event belongs to that track. And one of the things that they were doing was looking at departing aircraft as they go down the runway, and the noise signature that came up on a few second delay. Those, they were able to show some degree of match. And so the other events that would have been within the aircraft noise spectra, we're actually looking at using a different device to measure vibration, or take a noise monitor and set it to a totally different method of capturing noise. In fact, I can't even remember that term right now. Justin, do you remember what that was called again?
Nemo?
No. Nemo is talking about is how we're correlating the others.
Yeah.
No, it was a specific type of monitor, a Zulu or what. Anyway, you set it to that, and so pretty much open it up, let it run free, and you put it on the airport. And then any noise event in the community that's captured by the others, you can actually tie in with a digital noise signature and say, yes, that is that event that occurred. So we're looking at everything right now. That's part of the reason why we're just pulling our hair out, trying to make sure everything's correct.
Okay, so but back to number 8. I'm sorry, Bert.
Yes.
Back to number 8. We're saying that location is not good for many reasons, but when we're saying it's not good to measure overflights. So if we were talking about ground-based noise, it'd probably be a very good location for that.
No, lousy. As I mentioned, with the freeway and the roadway there, and the everything, the buildings nearby, better would be to have a noise monitor closer, or further to parallel to the 101 in the open space area that the airport owns. We're looking at that. We're also looking at the retention pond that is directly southeast of the ones on the side of Highway 101, putting a monitor there. So we'll be relocating, but in the interim, we'll be looking at those sites to see if we can do better, and also provide the ground noise.
And Terry, I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you when you were going to say something, so I apologize.
That's okay. My other question was, and I can understand when you have multiple events that are happening, shortening the time so that the system can reset, but with the shorter duration of, making it a minimum of 8 seconds, I think you're undercounting a lot of events that do bother the community, even though they're perhaps under 8 seconds. So it severely
60 seconds.
Well, but anything under 8 seconds, you're not counting.
We'll be lowering many of the trigger points to 6 seconds or less with this, and that should open our window up significantly, allowing us to capture aircraft noise events, because we all know most of the aircraft noise events are over a short term of, like you said, 8 seconds. The 60-second window is proving to be the most lucrative for us in capturing.
Okay. And then going back a little bit to the background page, in the, I guess it's page 48 of the packet, in the second paragraph, it says that in 2002, the airport no longer needed to operate with a variance because it no longer had incompatible land uses.
Right.
Is that saying that you no longer comply with Title 21, or just that you don't need a variance?
We don't need a variance.
Okay. And if that's the case, where are the Title 21 reports located? Are they still filed with Caltran?
We're actually doing an update of all of that information as part of our system review. And we're just about ready to put out a 3-year chunk of them. We should start with 2020 here by the end of the month.
Okay, so those haven't been on file with Caltrans.
No, they haven't.
Okay, that was the question I had on that. And I think I will save the rest of any other questions I have till after the public has commented. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Terry. Mayor Schneider.
Thank you. A couple of questions. The timing for SFO to turn this report in, will it allow this report to go to the Ground-Based Noise Committee where we can dive in a little bit deeper?
I don't see why we couldn't.
I mean, we're meeting next Wednesday, aren't we? Michelle, is that when we scheduled the ground-based noise meeting?
Yeah, you can go there.
Okay. I have to bring this to obviously my city. It is decommissioning a noise monitor in Millbrae, and it sounds like taking it outside of Millbrae to then tell Millbrae what Millbrae can or cannot do. But let me give you a couple of points here. First of all, and I'm going to be making this more and more clear, Millbrae predates SFO. SFO has huge impacts on us. And I'm a little resentful when SFO says, well, we really wish you didn't build the Gateway project, even though it went through the full process and did go through the airport land use and did receive permission for it. You cannot affect us and then give us no means of economic development on that. Now, a good assistance would have been had there been engineering information on building materials that are better at absorbing than bouncing noise. But sitting here and having the airport tell us what Millbrae should or should not do is very insulting. Number 3, I'll dive deeper into this report, but included in the ambient noise is not just the construction of the Gateway project, and it's not 101, which I frankly, with COVID, can tell that that is significant, but there is what we call Site 7 in our specific plan. It is owned by San Francisco, and they use it as a construction yard. It's running heavy equipment all day long. So there are many other local ambient noise sources that can be reduced. In terms of number 8, that is actually our corp yard, I believe, where the monitor is located. The city has gone out to bid now our 2nd time. I'm not overly in favor of this particular structure, but the city is looking at putting in a server farm there. And that bid, it's in the RFP process, so I can't speak about it, but there's a good likelihood that something will be constructed there within the next couple of years to begin with. Kathleen, I've never done this before, but my city manager has, and he and I are working on a request to Congresswoman Spear for a sit-down meeting to talk about all of the transportation inputs, all of the transportation agency inputs that affect Millbrae, and how each one points a finger at everybody else saying they produce noise and therefore we're not responsible for noise. Therefore, we have no noise barriers from Caltrain, none from Caltran, none from BART. And that has got to stop.
And if I could, we have 10 minutes left. And
I understand, but this is greatly inspecting me. I'd like to see this at ground-based noise where we can dive into it, and I will bring my engineering staff to it if I have to twist their arms.
If I may, sir, I'd like to apologize if I offended you, Mayor Schneider. It was no intent.
I know, Bert. I know. I understand. And it isn't just you. I actually had the managed lane group say, oh, well, we're not doing any mitigation from Millbrae because you're already so noisy. Well, and the only good news about the managed lane process is that they're going to repave 101 with rubberized asphalt. So there will be an incrementally reduced amount of sound. Okay. It is very frustrating.
And I hate to interrupt you, but I do need to, I do want to fit in.
5.5 years I have been listening to this, and this is my breaking point. So I appreciate that, Vice Mayor. I will shut up.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, any other members have questions or comments before we move on to public comment? And having none, then I will let you take it over, Angela.
Thank you, Chairman Ortiz. And we do have a couple hands raised. As a reminder, if you're calling by phone, you may press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will first call on Patrick Painter, followed by Darlene. Patrick, please accept this request, unmute your microphone and begin speaking.
Hi, thank you. Patrick Tainer here. I live in Brisbane. I'm trying to understand as I look at the tables that Bert was going through for determining the threshold set points. The methodology by which those were determined is not clear to me. So he could please explain that. I look at the numbers rising, as he even pointed out, as the threshold point is lowered from 65 to 55. In one case, almost doubling. And that is indeed what we sense on the ground as residents under these planes. So I'd like an explanation for how the threshold is then set at a higher point, because it wasn't clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tainter. And then what I might suggest, Mr. Tainter, is that you could send me an email and I could forward it to Bert to get you, the response to what you're asking is a little lengthy. So I think we probably take it offline. So, but if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to forward it to the airport and get you some answers.
Okay, I will do that. I will do that. Thank you.
And thank you for your comment. And go ahead, Angela.
If I can get the city you are calling from?
Brisbane.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tainter. And we'll go to the next public comment.
Ms. Darlene?
Darlene Palo Alto. As mentioned by residents and roundtable members, we want a more accurate representation of noise impact that reflects the actual aircraft noise close to or away from the airport. It's hard to argue with that. The principle of sharing accurate information for monitors, whether it's ground-based noise or overflight arrivals and departures. So regardless of the current methodology, which I think other people are going to comment after me, regardless of the methodology used by SFO to report aircraft noise, SFO could improve its noise reporting easily. Today, SFO reports average number of noise events as identified by thresholds and duration method, which we know undercounts the number of aircraft noise events. SFO could report N above, which counts how many aircraft exceed a certain noise level at a given location over a certain period of time. N above, for example, would say how many planes exceeded 55 dB, 60 dB, etc. Reporting on these bands would help reflect the actual noise experience of residents, because if we don't hit the threshold, we get 0 as a count, which is misrepresentation. MIT did this for an FAA project, so we know it's legitimate. I want to emphasize 3 points. N above accurately reflects the concentration of next gen for residents away from the airport. What is the benefit of permanent and temporary monitors if we don't use them to reflect the actual experience of noise? At this time, we may not be able to change the 65 DNL standard for significant impact, but at least we can accurately document our true noise experience. This is critical. And the good news is N above does not require the FAA to approve it. This is the one instance when we can do something and not require the FAA to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yapoli. That was a great comment. I don't know if
we have
Bert,
I'm sorry.
We have 2 more. Okay, so Darlene, I wish we had time to comment on that. I think that is very worthy of a follow-up, and maybe we'll do it for the next meeting. But with that, go on to the next one, please, Angela.
Thank you, Chairman. We have 2 more hands raised. I'll call on Peter Grace, followed by Mary Jo Freeman. Mr. Grace.
Hi, my name is Peter Grace. I'm from Brisbane. I'd like the current methodology severely undercounts the number of noise events. Noise events that bother people on the ground are not being counted. Reagan Airport has been using a more accurate method since 2015. And I quote from the noise manager at Reagan Airport: "Could not justify using an inaccurate methodology when better detection methods are available. Two problems that we face. First is aircraft noise below the threshold counted as community noise. Secondly, the noise event has to last a minimum of 8 seconds to be counted. Bert refers to reducing it to 6 now. As an example of what happens, I watched 24 hours of flight track and noise monitor data for the Brisbane noise monitor in March 2018. SFO counted 55 noise events. The same threshold, I counted 77, 38% higher. So I ask, would you accept a COVID test in your community that missed 38% of the positives, or would you ask for a better technology? At 55 dB, the state of California threshold standard, there were 411% more events than SFO noise office counted. SFO is presenting a flight every 20 minutes on that day, while the citizens on the ground recognize a flight every 5 minutes. The methodology that uses both flight track data and noise monitor data to ask, cause the noise monitor to rise, which is the method used at Reagan Airport. I'd also like to support the prior speakers and above comments.
Thank you, Mr. Grace. Appreciate that comment. And Angela, you said we have one more?
Yes, we have Mary Jo Fremont, and I see Jennifer Landisman also has raised her hand. So Mary Jo.
Okay, we are really running tight on time, so please keep it short.
Mary Jo Fremont, Palo Alto. So my comments are about the scope and accuracy. These reports only address the 5 permanent monitors that are under the Title 21 and the 65 dB contour. It has nothing to do with all the other monitors outside the contour, the 24 other permanent and the several temporary monitors. And the second issue is the accuracy. The reports do not really address that fundamental issue of accuracy of the minimum duration and threshold that is used. As Peter mentioned it, it's undercounting now. And as we all want, the residents and the roundtable members want noise reports to accurately reflect the aircraft noise experienced by people who live close to the airport as well as away from the airport. And the current method, I'll make it simple for you. An 8-second minimum duration with a 60 dB threshold means that an aircraft that has 7 seconds of noise over 60 dB doesn't count. Or if it's 30 seconds at 59 dB, it doesn't count either. But this is real noise. And furthermore, this threshold and duration method does not necessarily take into account the variable noise level in the background, such as day versus night. So we need a more accurate method. And the one that exists that Peter mentioned is the one that associates the noise recordings with the actual flight data. And it seems that BridgeNet, per what Bert said, BridgeNet is already doing that today. So why do we need a minimum duration and a threshold when you're already doing some correlation with actual flight data? So really what we need to do is have a review, a contrast, maybe HMMH can do this for you guys, to compare the two methods and say what is accurate in the next gen environment, inside and outside the 65 dB contour, what's compliant with Title 21 and what resources are required. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. And we have Ms. Landisman, and again, if we could try to keep it short, we're right at the end of our meeting.
I'll make it 1 minute. Jennifer Landisman, Palo Alto, such excellent comments about documenting and having the right methodology. But what we really, really need are the actual noise abatement programs for which these thresholds and everything will be used. SFO has Fly Quiet program. It doesn't extend to Mid-Peninsula. We don't have any programs. And so there's just void of that. And so the monitors, the documentation and this information is to be able to move forward on actual mitigation programs where we all can work together. And I feel that the Gbas program could be such an opportunity, but we really have to take it there, and it's not anywhere close yet. So thank you for all the comments that really reflect what we need, but we need those mitigation programs. Thank you.
Ms. Landesman, thank you for keeping it short. That was very much appreciated. I appreciate your comments too, and all the public comments. We always have some great people on and very well educated. With that, I'm going to give it to a final comment for any members before we sign off. Do we
There is
have any?
hands raised.
Okay. I'm sorry, you said there is hands, or there are hands, or there are no hands?
Terry's
Yes.
hand.
Terry O'Cobb.
Hi,
Terry,
I
go
will,
ahead,
I
please.
will keep this brief. Is it possible that HMMH could prepare a simple comparison of the two methods, the threshold and duration method, and an actual flight track data method, and bring it back to our next technical meeting?
Justin, I'll let you give a quick response.
Yes, I think that is something that we could do. We've sort of looked into it before with a California airport. Some of the complexity, and I won't go into detail because I know we're short on time here, but the complexity really has to deal with Title 21 and how it's actually worded. And I know Bert will attest to that, that it's I guess you could say outdated, but yet you still need to show compliance. And that's what this report is doing, is showing compliance. Nevertheless, I understand the concerns and the comments expressed, and it's definitely something HMH could assist with if tasked with that.
So we will have more conversations about that. Any other final comments from members?
I do not see any hand raised from the members.
Very good. And with that, then I will say thank you to everybody for participating, and thank you for the staff to setting it up and running everything. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.